In a minute since we talked to Sal. League year opens in less than a week. We've got some Bills news along the way. We're on Colton Pereco watch. Sal, what are you doing for Colton Pereco watch to find out if he waves his no move?
I'll be probably playing a little golf today, and then on my way home, and I'm in Florida right now, so I'll be monitoring all along the way as I'll be with my mother-in-law a little bit today down here, and nice get a chance to see her a little bit. So I got a lot of things going on where I'll be watching and poking in, just like I was all night last night while I was at this Buffalo event down here in Sarasota, and people were asking me about it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm looking, man. I don't know what's going on. It's great.
If I remember right, nobody hates the concept of the no trade clause in hockey than Sal. If I remember right,
I think it's I don't hate the concept. I think it's way too liberally given. I think like every single guy now gets a no movement clause, no trade clause. Like it should have a much higher threshold for players to have. I think it's ruined the sport in a lot of ways. It's hard to, it's hard to help build your team. And I get it. Well, start winning. It's hard. Well, if you want to make moves, but all of a sudden you trade for a guy. Well, I'm sorry, he can't come to you. He doesn't want to come to you. You're one of his 10 teams that he put on his list. Like, I hate that. I just think it's terrible for sports.
Sal joining us on the Western Hotline. Again, the Sabres appear to have agreed to a deal with the Blues on Colton Pereco. He's not yet waived his no move, and if we get any more information on that throughout the morning, we will pass that along. Sal, we found out yesterday, also Tim Graham of the Athletic reporting that Connor McGovern has not heard from the Bills, and maybe hitting the open market is something that they think he has earned the right to do. I don't know if we would have expected the Bills to reach out to McGovern in the meantime with any sort of check-in with us, but he thinks this means it's over for him, which maybe that does not come as a surprise. We're kind of prepped. I feel like we've been prepped to see the center market go nuts, and he's number 2 on the pecking order in terms of who's going to get paid.
Yeah, and listen, it's not a surprise, and it hasn't been a surprise that the Bills most likely would have to move on. I think it's been kind of almost a fait accompli for him and David Edwards, given their price tags and given the fact the Bills have backups that I think they at least have felt that they're ready. And, hey, this is why you draft and why you develop. And, Cedric Van Pran-Granger at center for Connor McGovern specifically, Alec Anderson at guard, who they already, re-signed with David Edwards. They could go out there and they could still, sign somebody who's a little bit, between that, right? Like a little bit more expensive and more experienced, but not making as much money. But those guys blocking for the league's leading rusher and the Buffalo Bills offense that, has scored as much as they have in the last few years and starting, and they've earned themselves a lot of money. And I think it's always been the case that the Bills were going to have to move on. The fact that, Tim reported that Connor McGovern hasn't even heard from the Bills, it just goes to show, I guess, that they've kind of made that decision already. Now, doesn't mean they can't call him up today or tomorrow. March 9th is when they can start talking to other free agents if they have any idea to, bring in any experience they want. And maybe it doesn't go their way. I know Connor McGovern loves Buffalo and he loves being here. But it just feels like the team has made their decision at this point. It doesn't mean they can't revisit that decision. But you're probably looking at a new center, I'm guessing, as we sit here right now. That's Cedric Van Pran-Granger, but it doesn't have to be.
If they both walk out the door, McGovern and Edwards, and maybe that's even the most likely scenario at this point, what would you think is more likely for them to add around Alec Anderson and Van Pran-Granger? Would you think they would go young with rookies, or would they be looking in more of the bargain bin veteran free agent aisle?
I think you're probably looking at some veterans, some guys that have some skin on the wall, have some experience. I mean, you guys remember when David Edwards was signed? He wasn't even a starter when he was signed. David Edwards came in as he was a 6th offensive lineman, right, for a year, basically. And the Bills, they have 2 guys, like I said, and multiple guys actually now that they've drafted who they feel that can start stepping up. And there's always an unknown with that, right? There's always an unknown. What are you going to get from Cedric Van Pran-Granger? What are you going to get from Alec Anderson? And if you don't have them play to the level you think they will consistently as a starter, I don't know how you can turn right to a young guy. Now, that said, where's the money come to get, a veteran? It's got to be somebody who might at least, not cost that much. So you're not talking about a high-level type of starter. Let's remember, Ryan Vandermark is still a restricted free agent. We haven't heard anything on him. Guys, to retain Ryan Vandermark's rights, the Bills are going to have to pay him over $3 million for a year. And I just don't know if they're willing to do that. So maybe you work out a deal where you can keep him for less money than that, or else you're going to have to, or else he's going to become a free agent. Maybe he winds up re-signing. That's number one. You did draft Chase Lunt last year. Chase Lunt could be a guard, he'd be a tackle. He's got some flexibility. But on the interior there, I don't know if you have really anything that's in the pipeline other than, like I said, Van Pran, Granger, and Anderson, and therefore you're probably going to have to get a little bit of stability maybe with a veteran or two. It doesn't mean they have to even make the team if those guys play pretty well.
Sal joining us on the Western Hotline talking Bills as the league year begins in less than a week and legal tampering comes down Monday. That's when things get started to contact free agents. We're also kind of waiting for some releases, whether it's a surprise cut. Sal, do you think there's any sort of like surprise cut candidate?
Ooh, I don't know if to be a surprise. I think anybody that you might think where they could save money, if that wouldn't surprise anybody, I don't think Curtis Samuel would surprise anybody.
Right. Taylor Rapp won't be a surprise, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think Taylor Rapp would surprise. I guess to a lot of people, maybe a Dawson Knox cut might be a surprise, but it's probably not considering the money. I've always felt that the best solution there would be a restructure. Maybe even extension. It sounds weird, but then you can spread the money out a little bit. But, I don't – so if he was released, would that really be a total surprise? I'm not really sure. Okay, I don't think they'll release this guy, but, like, you could say over $3 million by releasing Dorian Williams. That's a question of, do you think he's a guy that you can rely on to be, a starter, or do you want to pay him that money to be a special teams guy, go out and sign a linebacker, or, what is his role? So I'm not predicting they're going to, but that's a guy where you look at go, what about Tyler Bass? You can say, well, we're too many. He's coming off the injury. But I think the indication, that we've gotten from Tyler, from the Bills, that they feel that he's ready to go. He'll be ready to go. He'll be healthy. But, when you start to need money because you want to do things, you have to start thinking about these things.
I thought about Williams, too, just because it's $3.9 million if he's here, and it's only $200,000 if you cut him. But I think most of the sentiment has been that he would actually even fit better in this type of defense. So maybe that doesn't work. Is Dwayne Carter maybe a surprise? Would that be a surprise, or would that be maybe reasonable?
I don't think that'd be as stunning to me. I mean, they have to figure out, Joe, what they want to do on the defensive line with some of these guys who, you might think, well, is it redundancy here? Do you have truly what you need to fit in Jim Leonard's defense? Where does Dwayne Carter play with Deion Walker having the year he had, with TJ Sanders, having a nice, back end of his rookie year? You obviously have Ed Oliver. Now he is coming off the injury. Don't know exactly where that is right now, but would that be stunning to me? It would not be. That's actually a nice, it's a good name to kind of think about if he would be somebody they'd think about there.
We're also starting the process of top 30 visits for the Bills. Sal, I saw Ryan Talbot reporting yesterday, according to the Instagram of Chris Bell, Louisville wide receiver Chris Bell. He shared on his Instagram story he's in for a pre-draft visit. He's a player that had a torn ACL last season. And I wonder if we've got any history, you might know this better than anyone, of the Bills drafting a player off an injury knowing it might take a little bit more time. Because, of course, the draft is if you're hurt at the wrong time, if you're a first-round pick, you might be a fourth-round pick because teams are, reluctant to do that. So have you noticed, or do you think the Bills have any sort of idea on drafting players that got injured late in the year?
I mean, the first one that comes to mind is way long ago, but it's Willis McGahee, right?
You're right, yeah.
And he misses a whole year. And the Bills just felt, hey, we're going to wait a year on that. I just don't think the Bills have the luxury of waiting a year on anybody. I'm not saying he would be a year.
Yeah.
Dalton Kincaid had a bit of a back issue when they drafted him. Remember that, or something like that?
Yeah.
They had to think about Deion Walker last year. But Deion Walker was, surprising. I remember last year when they said that the reason he didn't have the year, his final year in college, was that they thought he would is because they discovered the back injury an issue. People were like, oh, my God, I can't believe it. And then he actually wound up, I think, even being ready for the start of training camp. I mean, we can go back to Shaq Lawson. Remember when he was drafted, and then we found out that he was going to, miss some time or needed surgery or something. I don't know. There was a lot of stuff going on. But, no, I just don't think the Bills are in a position to have to wait too long. That's the question, though, guys. The question is, how long are you waiting on these guys? How long would you have to wait for someone like that? Especially that position. Jeremy, given what this team has gone through at that position, what they're thinking about, and what I think they need, you have to have time on task there, right? So if he's not going to be ready for a full, off season, OTAs, training camp, how are you getting him up to speed versus Max Harrison, who missed time, was in the same situation, but he got hurt at corner. Now, I understand that corner, you still have to have, get the reps, but I just think receivers are a bit of a different animal when you're talking about getting on the same page with Josh Allen.
Sal Capaccio with us. Sal, do you have a favorite free agent idea that you've seen?
A favorite free agent idea? I think Leo Chanel is my favorite free agent idea. I don't think he'll be a bank breaker, but I think he's kind of he's perfect for Jim Leonard, and Leonard coached him at Wisconsin. He's good with the Chiefs. So I think that's probably my favorite free agent idea because we could throw around these names. Sure, I like Alec Pierce. I mean, what are we talking about for the money there? Like, I want value too. And look, I'm just like you guys. I mean, I think this team needs to take my philosophy on wide receiver is go take the biggest swing possible. I don't care how it is. I think if you there might be somebody out there we're not even talking about that we have no idea that if Brandon Beane calls up that they'd be willing to trade whatever team. Just go make the call. I don't care. Go make a call on Justin Jefferson. Make a call on Jamar Chase. I'm not kidding. Like, I just think you have to do that. So if all those avenues get exhausted, yeah, you can get me to an Alec Pierce and you can get me to a Mike Evans, which is a really nice player. I just need to know what the money is on those guys. And I'm thinking, they're not to the same level as the guy that I'm the best guys in the league necessarily. So I think for your question, Joe, I get to how would I maximize myself and still get a good player? And I like Leo Chanel. I think PJ Locke would be a good fit. Safety from Denver, and of course played for Jim Leonard, right? I mean, that's a guy. There's a few of those Denver guys that could fit in. John Franklin Myers. Actually, that's a really nice player to think about to fit in this Bills defense. So I just think those connections to Jim Leonard, that I think that way when it comes to these favorite free agents.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Evans because he's the guy I'm thinking a lot about for next week. You've talked to TJ Reeves, obviously, a bunch throughout the years, and I feel like I always remember him saying, like, that guy is going to retire. Like, I'll believe it when I see it, that he's not going to be playing for the Buccaneers. And now the wind is starting to blow towards that that relationship might actually end here unless, I don't know, like, do you see that as being real? I know you talk to TJ a lot. Or is this, he's trying to get Tampa maybe to give him a little bit more money?
It's funny. TJ's always said that, and so has John Ledyard. And John covers the Bucs too, as you guys know. He's, down in Tampa, and I spoke with him at the Combine, and he said the exact same thing that TJ's always said, which is, I mean, I'll believe it when I see it. Like, that guy's been a Buccaneer, and he even said he predicted he'll stay in Tampa. I interviewed John at the Combine, and he predicted he'd stay in Tampa for this very reason. Like, I don't know, I just can't see him leaving. But John, I think for the first time, kept that door open as well. Haven't asked TJ specifically about him, but no, good idea there. And I'm guessing TJ would probably say the same thing, which is, man, I can't see him leaving, but it just feels like this could actually happen. And the reason is they have some young, good wide receivers too. And Godwin, obviously, with the injury last year, but it does feel like it could be blowing that way. I just look at it and say, man, Mike Evans, he's been in this league a long time. He's been with one organization. He's been playing down in Florida with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, yeah, you really got to make a hard decision in life to say, I'm going to suddenly pack my bags, go play for the Buffalo Bills. Yes, Josh Allen, and they're contenders. There's no doubt about it. But I don't think it's as easy as people think for guys like that who, been with one organization, especially, playing in a city like Tampa and enjoying the weather year round and things like that, and say, okay, you know what? It's time for me to do that at the end of my career.
Sal Capaccio joining us on the Western Hotline. Sal, we've seen trade prices out there, and whether it's A.J. Brown, which I saw is the reported price, a first and a second, it is generally that time of year. I don't really take these trade asks to be all that serious because teams are kind of, setting an anchor on one end of the negotiations. But do you feel like the Bills are going to trade a good asset? If I were to say to you, yes, no, the Bills trade their first or second round pick from this or next year's draft, do you think they will ultimately spend that in trying to acquire a player this offseason?
I think the best way I'd answer that, Jeremy, is I think they're very willing to do it if it's the right player. I just think making things like that work are very tough sometimes. I mean, look what the Sabres we just went through here the last 24, 48 hours with everything going on. And obviously it could wind up, being a first anyway. But I mean, I just think it's very, very tough to make both sides work sometimes, especially when you consider the whole package that you hear about, like A.J. Brown and what the Eagles want. And it just sounds too much. Like maybe they're willing to give up first, but not plus, right? But I do think they're willing to give up high picks if they have the right guy in mind. If there's a guy that they really believe can help this team and come in right now, I think Brandon Beane is of the mind to be aggressive this year. I really do. There was a lot made. I don't know if I talked to you guys about, the year one comments from Joe Brady, but I know Show the Bulldog talked about it a lot. When Joe Brady talked to the combine and he kept saying year one a couple of times, that kind of raised some eyebrows. Like, what do you mean year one? You guys are not rebuilding. You sound like you're on this, multi-year plan. And it's not really what he meant. We actually talked with Joe about it afterwards off to the side from the media, like, hey, in year one, it's getting some playing. He's like, look, it's not what he's trying to say. It's year one of him. It's year one of some change that people, haven't been used to in a while here. I think, like, the Bills and Joe Brady and Brandon Beane are in the mind of, no. Like, they didn't make this move away from Sean McDermott to Joe Brady to be stagnant or go backward. And I think because of the backlash that happened initially from the move, I think to me that might even embolden Brandon Beane even more, guys, to say, like, I'm going to show, like, why we did this. Like, we have to do this because this is about getting to the Super Bowl. How do you do that? You got to make moves to get your team better. And that might mean parting with a first-round pick.
And they really haven't. Like, this was part of, like, Beane said at the Combine, I think maybe with McAfee, that, like, he has to stop himself from being aggressive sometimes. They've not really made a move like that I would describe in that way, Sal, since Vaughn.
That's right. Yeah, because, I mean, Joey Bosa wouldn't be that, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the trade for Stephon Diggs, right? And then suddenly, we're sitting at, it was March 6th. I looked up the other day. It was March 16th, 2020. I think was it Mike Garafolo who had it first? No, it was, or Glazer. One of them said something like, bam, it was Bean After Dark, right? Bam, there's a trade and the idea. And that was like kind of oh my God, I can't believe it. Like, they're doing this. And why do they do it? I mean, Bean had basically said at every turn, anytime he'd say to people, I got to get Josh Allen a number one wide receiver. And he went out and did that. And I just think he's talking like a guy this year again who is kind of saying the same kind of things. And I don't know if it's going to be receiver, but I'll point to the interview he did with Josh Reed, our buddy at Channel 4, right after the press conference with Brady. And it just always stuck with me that he said something to Josh along the lines. I believe he said, so I guess the story was when Tyler Dunn did a story about, Joe Brady's interview and how it happened. And there's some talk that Joe wants to, attack more vertically and open up the offense or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then Brandon Beane said to Josh in the interview, well, it's my job to make sure Josh isn't thrown to guys that look like you and me. And I'm like, okay, like, what's he telling us here, right? Like, I think there's the aggressiveness. Like, you're right, Joe. There hasn't been that, but I don't know if they've had the resources because of low picks and because of cap to go out and make the kinds of moves they did for a Stephon Diggs that year. You know what I mean? And a Von Miller. Now you can go out and get a Joey Bosa and spread the money out over 3 years. There's no doubt about that. You can do that. But I think what you're talking about, though, is this really ultra-aggressive move with these high picks or this monster money.
And maybe, like, right, like, because a lot of times those top 10 picks, like, aren't getting dealt for veteran players. Like, you'll see the trade you saw yesterday, which is McDuffie gets traded, and it's not the 13th pick that's being dealt to Kansas City. It's the 29th pick, right, that's going back. And I would imagine, like, if you're Philadelphia and you're trying to get a first plus for A.J. Brown, like, you're probably expecting the team that you're doing business with to be picking somewhere, middle to late first. You're not getting, like, the 3rd or the 10th overall pick for A.J. Brown.
And I would think it'd be a sliding scale for them, right? Which is, like, if you are getting a higher pick, it's less extra involved. If you're getting a lower pick, it's more extra involved, right? I'm not crazy about the A.J. Brown idea personally for the Bills because of just kind of what he brings, like, off the field and the distractions. And Joe, you know better than anybody with your brother, doing Locked On Eagles and, all the things that he's a great player. Nobody would deny that. But I mean, what are you getting to deal with outside of that? And are the Bills willing to do that after they went through the Stephon Diggs stuff? And now you see Diggs on the move again. And what did Trey Wingo write? Do you see Trey Wingo's tweet last night? Stephon Diggs looking for his fifth team. There's a reason why he doesn't stick around too long. And we can debate all that because he's a great player, but we also know there's a lot of stuff that comes along with that. I'm not the craziest about an A.J. Brown idea. If they did it, they have to have a lot of conviction that he's going to fit and it's going to work, and you're already dealing with all the Keon Coleman stuff, right? I mean, like, I just think that's a lot to take in right now.
If you were in charge of setting the odds on Diggs back to the Bills, would you put it at 0?
Is there a less than 0 I could pick?
Okay, so
No,
0.
I would. Yeah, I would put. I would put it at 0. I mean, come on. Would that not be? Although we do live in a city that, as Jeremy knows so well, Ted Nolan returned to be the head coach of the Buffalo Sabres.
That's true. That did happen. We thought that was unlikely. That happened. Sal, thank you. We'll check in probably next week as the league year gets started.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. You got it.
Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline.